right. I think we're live now. Hello, everyone. So I'm Priyanka, and I will be moderating this, but we're just going to have a good time, and it's going to be free-flowing. I would love it if the panelists will introduce themselves and speak to, whatever they want to speak to introduce themselves. John, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is John Salvani. I am Assistant Dean for Advancement for our College of Fine and Applied Arts at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Been in this role now for a couple years, but been with the university for just about 7 years. And then actually been working in higher education advancement work for a little over 15 years. So my family and I just moved down to Champaign 2 years ago. We were actually based up in the Northern Illinois and Chicago area, and came down to Champaign 2 years ago. And so my work is connecting our college and our alumni and donors all together in ways of interaction, whether it's bringing folks together for events, visiting with them individually, or even being able to share communications out with them. So been doing that, and happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, all right. And Damon, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Damon McGee. I'm currently working for a publishing company with the Baha'i National Organization. Before that, I was with libraries at South Suburban College Library as an archivist and a librarian. I'm currently in Chicago. I have 2 kids, and that's why I'm trying to be as quiet as possible so that they can sleep. Yeah, I'm really excited about this panel and ready to get the show on the road.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds like you two are involved in a few different communities, whether facilitating them or being a participant, which leads us perfectly to the question that we are going to try to answer tonight. What does the word community mean while being in isolation? So I want to throw this to you guys before we do, because semantics are involved. I did look up the definition of the word community, and as you can imagine, there are a ton of definitions, but it seems that the Merriam-Webster kind of like initial first base definition is a unified body of individuals, such as, and then they go forward. And then in terms of what does isolation mean, it seems like, again, the baseline definition is far away from other people, places, buildings, minimal contact, and that's what I got. Everything else was just like getting a little bit more complicated. So on that note, I would love to hear your thoughts on community, right? So we can start there, and then how you guys feel that community has changed given that we are in isolation. And I'll throw it to either of you, whoever feels it first.
Well, I'll jump in if that's all right. Community to me is just that sense of togetherness, Priyanka. It's bringing everybody together as a sense of purpose for everybody to be together, right? There's when you're in a community of things or people or in an area, there seems to always be some kind of commonality, right? There's a reason why you're gathering. And when you have that sense of community, it's a comfort, right? You feel like you want to be a part of that group. You feel like you are included. You can't wait till the next time the group gets back together. And so I think when you have a sense of community like that, it brings out a lot of positive emotion, right? And it brings out a lot of good feelings. I'm sure many of us, our friends, our loved ones, right, our spouses, we all were part of one community in some respect. That's how we got to know each other. That's how we got together. That's how we got to be part of each other's lives. And I feel that when you have that sense of community, you have that good feeling, right? And so to me, that's what I feel like community is. And that's why sometimes when we're in a situation like we are right now, you feel that sense of community can get a little broken if you don't try to keep that, try to be creative to keep the community together.
Yeah. Damon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think John really hit it on the head. And to add to that, though, I would think that community is individuals trying to join in meaningful conversation and meaningful action. And this is something that is very important in the present day. I think that in the wake of COVID-19, people have been, with the shelter in place orders, people have been thrown into like a reflective state where you have to stay in one spot and you have to figure out what you're going to do from day to day, and no one's telling you what to do. And you're really on your own, but you're probably reaching out to, individually and just on your own time, you're reaching out to people who you miss, who you love, people you may have not even spoken to previously. And there's just a lot of communication that's going to go back and forth with that. And so I think it's a change for everybody in that way. And how an individual approaches the community is trying to add to that sort of meaningful conversation that is happening all around the world.
Yeah. On that note, do either of you feel that your isolation has impacted your views on community? Because both of you have articulated really personal but also very relatable points on what community means. But do you think that could be impacted given isolation? And do you see that kind of changing on a day-to-day basis for you, or even people that you're close to, like your families?
Yeah, I've absolutely seen it right off the bat. It's, we talk about and I can actually make it relatable both on the professional and personal side, right? In the profession that I'm in advancement, connecting with folks is a big part of our job. It's building a lot of those connections. It's building that community, if you will. And when we are, when we're isolated, when that factor is actually taken out of our control, as we all are experiencing it right now, we have to be creative, and it gives us an opportunity to really find new ways of staying connected in order to keep that sense of community together. At the University of Illinois, and especially here at our College of Fine and Applied Arts, we do have a lot of avenues and a lot of venues that actually get in touch with the community, right? Outside of just the university and the students and faculty. I mean, the community around us, our Krannert Center for the Performing Arts is a beautiful example of that. That is an area that does a lot of community, and it shows a lot of community. And when you isolate folks away from it, right? It's not even just an area or a place where people are coming to watch performances. We've talked about, this is like a therapeutic thing for many folks, right? This is a home away from home kind of thing for them. Their daily routine may be to come into our building and to be a part of it. So, when you think about that kind of thing and you see the kind of impact that can have, especially people that are by themselves, you can really sense the impact right away. And I think it's on all of us to really make it a point to keep the community together by reaching out and being creative. I know I personally have done that with my own family, both locally and abroad, being able to really try to stay connected, knowing that this isn't just impacting our area, but it's impacting where they live as well.
Yeah, so to speak on that a little, personally relating it is, I work in nonprofit and I consult for nonprofits, and this, as Damon said, in the wake of COVID-19, we're seeing how that shifted, and this has shown the flaws, if you will, right, in the infrastructure of these communities. And so, John, I'm gonna push you a little, and I'm gonna ask if you've seen where the infrastructure is failing your communities in the institutions that you represent.
That's a good question. I wouldn't necessarily say failing. I would say it struggles a bit because, the method of communication that we have been used to doing all this time is obviously changing, right?
Mhm.
The methods of communication, the way we communicate, um, the opportunities to communicate, it struggles when you get into a situation like this. Let's use this electronic platform that we're on right now. I heard on the news today that a month ago, 2 months ago, right, only 10 million users on Zoom, and as of last week there were 200 million users of Zoom.
Mhm.
So everybody is really just trying to find ways to stay connected. And I wouldn't necessarily say that things are failing to that extent. But I think it is a struggle, and a struggle that we're trying to figure out ourselves. This is the new normal for now for many of us. So I do think that there's um, there are some opportunities there that could be learned from this experience.
Yeah. Damon, thoughts on this? Thoughts on community and
Uh,
the institutions?
oh, well, so I come from an archive and a library background.
Mm-hmm.
So as you know, all around the United States, at least, all libraries and archives are pretty much closed. Um, that is not something that I necessarily agree with, but I understand that librarians are worried, for their own health,
Yeah.
as everyone else is, even our medical professionals and our nurses and doctors and all those people who are doing great work. But a library is a essential institution, and um, I don't know if the library being closed is like a failure to society or a failure to community. I know that within the community, communication has changed drastically since the closing of the space of the library.
Yeah.
Um, we are not getting very many questions from patrons, for example, which sort of ran communication, across all library platforms. So that has changed a lot. Um, and I can give another example just from my life. I'm a very outdoorsy type of person. I travel a lot. I travel out of the country a lot. Um, my wife and kids are French citizens, and this has been a very tough time,
Mm-hmm.
for us. The airline sort of the situation with the airlines has broken down to where we can't even travel to see family. So, these are things that are very hard to deal with. And I don't know if it's a failure on the side of institutions. I just think people are pretty much blindsided by this whole thing, and they don't know what to do. So we're sort of trusting in our government to try to guide us, and trusting in our scientists, which is probably a good thing because that has been sort of on the back burner for a long, long time. So, this is a new thing. Sometimes it's very exciting to just listen to the news and take in to the advices that people are taking from scientists. And yeah, so
And you bring up a good
it can be
point too,
both.
Damon, trusting all those, uh, and we need to trust each other, right? We need to trust each other that
Right.
we're in this to do to do it the best way possible, right? Whether it's
That's right.
a positive scientific outcome, whether it's a positive personal and societal outcome, we need to also trust each other. And, and especially in times like this, we need to be able to build each other up and not try to break each other down.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah. Do you think that that's something that is a lesson that we're all kind of learning through this process? And are there any other main lessons that you two feel that have just become evident only because we are in this specific circumstance?
Yes. I think the lesson, first and foremost is people who we're bunked up with, our family. I had a few friends who sadly lost their parents to COVID-19. So their parents are literally a statistic, and they feel like their parents are a statistic. And we laugh and joke about COVID-19 all the time, but these are people that are, getting touched frequently. So I would say you have to talk to family, and you have to be, somewhat open-minded about, how to stay in close communication with them. And it just troubles me to see how the elderly are being affected by, this virus, and how youth, young people can't even connect to their, elderly family members because of it. And that's just one example of how this thing has changed the very facet of like human nature and human communication, just through family, just splitting family, And I'm sorry, I'm not being very articulate about this, but it is something that I think about, throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, I on a similar note, but not in the same breath, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and essentially this friend was not taking social distancing as seriously. And it was this kind of moment, right, where they asked, oh, you're really not gonna see your family for 6 weeks? And I was like, oh my gosh, like that is the whole point, right? The whole point is that if I saw my parents, whom are, significantly older than me, and if if I'm asymptomatic and I pass it to them, they will become a statistic, right? But they're still my parents, and I would still have to have that responsibility. And the fact that what infuriates me is that I don't think people are understanding that we're talking about human life, right? The consequence of not taking the advice seriously of medical experts that have literally dedicated their lives to studying something like this is that you are affecting the ability of someone else to continue their life. And I'm seeing that I feel a certain way, but it isn't how everyone else feels. And of course, I live in Chicago, and I have my friends, and I have my social communities, and I have my professional communities, and that is an echo chamber in a way. And then once you kind of step out of that, you're realizing, oh, this isn't what I'm experiencing as reality isn't what other people are experiencing as reality.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point on that one, Priyanka. I mean, it's the viewpoints of other folks, the way that they see this. You have folks that are taking it super serious. You're seeing folks who are, think that this is just a common cold and it's getting blown way out of proportion. And, when they see the impact, and that's one of the things I'm trying to encourage folks. Like, I know the news is so depressing right now to watch, right? But that's our source of information. Right. I got friends who are in the newscasting business, and I know for a fact this has got to be just painful for them to report.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the way we know what we need to be doing. And I agree with you. It's like there are some folks that need to be taking things more seriously. And I think this goes back to that the topic at hand, right? Like, what does it mean to be a community? Well, being a community means you all are in this together,
Mhm.
right? It's gonna suck that we're, hey, welcome back.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck that we're gonna be at home for weeks upon weeks, right?
Mhm.
It may seem like we may not be doing our part by just staying at home, right? Like, everybody's heart's in the right place. They want to help people out. They want to bring things to people. They want to make things for people, and that's great. You should do that. But if we're being told by the medical professionals to stay home
Yeah.
to keep our community safe,
Mhm.
then by God, stay home and keep the community safe. And Damon, you brought up a great point about, the impact of people not being in libraries, right? Or in different facilities that really bring together communities, right? I mean, picture the University of Illinois. You graduated from here, so you know what this campus is like. Thousands upon thousands of brilliant minds and faculty and students and are congregated here, 9 months a year, right? To not have that capability to do that anymore, for now, it's heartbreaking, right? To be able to go on campus and see nobody around, right? And for us to not be able to celebrate a commencement for our graduating seniors because of what's going on. Those are decisions that had to be unfortunately made, and I think it goes back to that struggle we talk about, right? That this is historic. This is unprecedented. We've never seen this before, and how we react to it is going to be very important. And I think that is what's going to make for a strong community. People together to really make it through this, and we will get through this. It's a matter of when, but we will get through this. And I think that's going to be important when you have a strong community to help you get through that.
Yeah. So speaking on reactions, audience question: how do we get outside of our bubble if we're in isolation? Right? We've seen changes in education and community, and so how are we reacting to that? How are we reacting to being in isolation, being in these bubbles, right? Because we can't be in these physical spaces anymore. Damon, do you wanna take the lead on this one?
Yeah. I believe it depends on what type of bubble you're in. If the bubble was something that was bad for you, then maybe it's a good thing that you're in isolation. But if it was something that was uplifting for you, then you just have to find ways to change it.
Mm-hmm.
I can give an example. I'm a huge climber, and the climbing community is very, very tight knit. And you actually have to have depending on what type of climbing you're doing. I do a lot of sport climbing, which requires having a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like was it 2 weeks ago? Was the first week that I haven't seen my climbing partner. And we were supposed to go on a trip this weekend, actually. And we were just texting between one another, and I'm like, man, I really missed you. And this really sucks that this is our only thing that we really have in common. So we're trying to find other things that we have in common, but we don't really have other things in common. So but I know that once this thing is over, like, I'll be climbing with this person. But for now, like, our love for climbing has changed into sort of an ethic for working out at home.
Mm-hmm.
So we have like fitness competitions, where we, just text, the types of things that we did, and challenge each other to do it. And but I would say that our bubble was sort of popped naturally by this whole thing. So and I know it's just talking about isolation period, but I would say that I don't feel like I'm in a sort of type of prison. I feel like yes, like maybe I'm an innocent person being locked up for something that he didn't do, but I don't feel like I'm in prison. Like I can still communicate with other people, but I would say all of my bubbles have been popped from like day one. I was like, oh yeah, we're still gonna go climb this weekend, and that's just not a reality right now. The state parks are actually closed. I don't even know of a time when state parks or national parks actually close unless it's actually a big disaster like fire or floods and things like that. So, this is just something that's very unprecedented.
Yeah. John, before you speak on your thoughts about the bubble, I actually have a question, an audience question for you. As a marketing professional, how will this change strategic operations? Whichever you want to answer first.
Well, we can talk about the marketing question. Changes a lot. It's the brand of the communication now. It's the way we communicate. The typical face-to-face interactions are actually being done like this more. I think it's the amount of resources that we have now, and thank goodness for technology, right, to be able to help us through much of this. And the use of that technology is going to be important from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, because it's the continued interactions, right, and being able to do that. But I think a lot of the things that's going to really change the most is messaging and the way we message things right now. That as much as we're trying to, it's really not business as usual right now, and that we want to make sure that we're still sharing the message of what's going on here, but in a way that's also going to be very receptive to our folks who are going to be reading that message. And so, it's a lot of factors to think about, but I think from a marketing standpoint, for us, it's just we've had to kind of pivot on the things we wanted to share, right? If we're right now, we'd usually be talking about getting close to the end of the academic year and preparation for graduation and commencement and so forth. And, are you preparing your projects for finals and stuff like that? Now it's, talking about how are we pivoting to online education and everything like that. So there's definitely a change in the communication. And I think that's probably the biggest change more than anything else is the way we're communicating and what those messages entail. And then real quick, because I know we're running a little short on time here, but to answer the question about the bubble, and how do you get out of your, how to get out of your bubble? Is that the question, Priyanka?
How do we get outside of these bubbles, and because we're in isolation?
Yeah, you could still step outside, right? And hang out. I still try to go outside and just to eat or just to drink a cup of coffee, and get a fresh air. We're all isolated together, right? Hopefully, for those of you who are fortunate enough to be with people in your isolation, you just try to make the most of it. That's what we try to do in our house. I like grilling, so I find it super weird that I can grill during the week right now, but and so pictures of food, I'm sharing it with buddies and all that, and sharing with friends, and even members of my work team. We share it. So, it's really just making the most of what you're able to do there, and trying to make it in a way that's fun, and just finding the positives in everything, right? It's going to be it's a tough situation we're in right now, but if you're ever starting to feel like you're really stuck in that bubble, try to do things that you've always wanted to try to do and you just couldn't, right? Like if you all wanted to sit down and try to put together a 1,000 piece puzzle, hell, do it. Things like that, right? I know it sounds kind of small, versus taking like a trip to Florida or something, but doing something that is that'll keep you all together and keep you all entertained. I think that's the way to really stay close.
Damon, I'm going to squeeze in one more question for you that just popped up. Will the physical space of a library disappear with citations like the one as a society that we're facing? You kind of talked about it here, but
it absolutely will not disappear. Libraries is the library is sort of the heart of the community. Like John said, it's a place that brings a lot of people together. So the space of a library will change. Like you may see a Starbucks in the library soon, but you know, I don't think that the actual library as a space that's books and a space that has librarians who are professional and can help you find information, that sort of thing will not change. And it's just very weird that libraries are closed right now, because libraries usually thrive in economic disaster. It is the first place where people want to go. And so it being closed right now is just something that, you know, just insights like temporary, it's not permanent, you know. So I think that the library space and the library institution will continue as it did before COVID-19. It may be a year from now that, you know, we will see changes, but yeah, I think the libraries are here to stay.
I'd like to leave off on that optimistic note, and I'm Priyanka Das. I'd like to thank Nick for bringing us all together, and thank you, Glappitnova Virtual. We are on day 7 of this month of virtual. Email me, dasxpri@gmail, and I'm Priyanka L. Das on all social media platforms. John and Damon, will you please let everyone know how they can contact you if they so desire?
Yeah, you can. Go ahead, Damon. You start. No, you start. Go ahead.
You can contact me at mcgee.damon@gmail.com. I do not know my social media tags like at all. I'm not good at that type of stuff, but you can definitely find me in social media. Actually, if you Google me, like, I'm the first guy that pops up. So I'm the first Damon McGee out of, like, you know, 500,000 in the world that pops up. So
hey Damon, I feel you. There's not a lot of John Salvanis out there. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm the first one that pops up too. So yeah, you can email me at the letter J and then my last name, Salvani @illinois.edu. My social media is just very simple. It's at John Salvani, all one word, and then also on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free. Just let me know that you're connecting with me because you listened to our virtual conversation here, so I know where you found me. But yeah, you can contact me there.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye.